Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest introduced to you now. DianeLadd is a licensed independent clinical social worker, a behavioral health counselor, and a woman diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Taking her health into her own hands after worsening MS symptoms in 2022 and a second autoimmune diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, Diane was forced to close her thriving behavioral health practice due to debilitating fatigue symptoms. After much study and contemplation, she made the life-saving decision to eat a strict carnivore diet with the hope of alleviating symptoms. On March 5th, 2024, Diane began eating only animal products, water, salt, and a little morning coffee. And 1 year later, reports that she has reversed nearly 100% of symptoms of MS and RA. Wow, that's amazing. Diane is passionate about telling her story on her YouTube channel at Boston Carnivore DianeLadd, as a guest on other channels and platforms such as ours, and at conferences and to any audience who will listen to her carnivore story of healing and transformation. Diane is a carnivore coach, a master at helping people to identify unwanted thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and beliefs that are getting in their way and supporting them to adopt a mindset that is beneficial to getting what they want. DianeLadd, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you for having me, Casey. I'm
It
very
is
happy to be here.
It's such an honor to host you. You came highly recommended from somebody I absolutely love, Maggie Stewart. She
She's
said you
awesome.
must. She is awesome. She's
Yeah,
doing
I
amazing
love
work.
her.
I love her podcast, Off the Couch. We've hosted her on our show. I've been hosted on her show as well a few times. And I just love people that are so passionate like that, and very similar to you and your story of just wanting to get a message out there. And so when she connected us, I hadn't heard of you before, but I told Maggie and I told you that whoever Maggie suggests should be on our show should be on our show. We don't need to vet them out at all.
That's
So I already know you're
awesome.
going to be an amazing person and a wonderful person to chat to today.
Oh, thank you, Casey. I love that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful
I
community. It really is a wonderful community. This podcasting community and YouTube and Instagram. Everyone that I've met is just so kind and so awesome.
That is such a great way to say this. We were talking offline a little bit about some of the people that you've recently met and you got to work with, and you talked about Carrie Mann and Robert Kiltz, and like all these
Yeah,
people
yeah.
are wonderful, amazing, kind, caring, sweet humans. You hardly find an exception to that in this world.
It's true. It's true. I went to a meetup, Carrie Mann's meetup in Wisconsin last fall, and I met everyone there, and I had a conversation with Robert Kiltz, and he said to me, "Do you have a YouTube channel?" I said, "No." He said, "You need to have a YouTube channel." I said, "I don't know about that, you know?" And I was so afraid that because you hear all these negative comments online from people and, the stories that you hear. And I was kind of afraid of it. I had this fear of it. And I started my channel on February 2nd that day, and everything's been wonderful. And people have just been so nice. And the comments have been so awesome. I'm just so
Uh,
grateful.
That's great. That's really happy to hear. That doesn't necessarily surprise me, but yeah, sometimes, I had kind of the same reservation when we started this podcast. Is like there's already so many great podcasts out there. You're already talking to so many amazing people. What the hell am I going to be able to do? But you just start and you start recording and you get a message out there, and soon enough, like you get to talk to more people and you meet more people. And like yesterday, I got to interview Dr. Ken Berry. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
it's
you
it's such a
did? That's
crazy.
awesome.
Oh, amazing. It's such an
Oh,
honor to be able
wow.
to chat to any of these people. And, they become friends at conferences. And I've talked to Robert Kilt several times. And he's just a nice, normal dude who will chat up anybody for any amount of time about whatever they like.
And the people that I've met, it's just, when they speak to you, they look at you, they take the time, you know, that space is for you, and it's just so wonderful. And I really think it's the carnivores. I really think it's the carnivores. I think that when you eat a diet that you're supposed to eat, it just does so much for your internal being that you can focus on another person. You can, it's just so amazing that you'll have the calmness to be in a conversation and to listen. And it's just different. I can tell. I can tell people who are eating properly. I can tell
Yeah.
people that are eating, as Dr. Ken Berry says, a proper human diet.
Proper human diet. Yeah, it's so funny you brought that up because we talked about that exact thing that you just mentioned on our interview. Like when you're eating the right things, your spirit just feels different. You feel kinder, you feel more patient, you can deal with stress so much better. My anxiety dropped right out after a few weeks. I didn't even know that I had it. And like you just feel more present and more spiritual in every which way. And when you get a bunch of those people in a room together, the energy is just off the
Oh,
charts.
it's amazing.
It's so cool. I heard you on a show talking with someone. I wasn't familiar with him, but he was obviously a carnivore and he was promoting the Hack Your Health conference, which I've
Yes.
gone to in the
Dante
last 2
Ferrigno.
years. Dante. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I need
Yes.
to reach out to him.
Yeah,
And
he's
the Hack Your
awesome.
Health, yeah, he sounded like a great host, and I've heard his name in the community. I need to reach out to him. But yeah, in 2024, the conference was held in Austin, Texas, and it's an interesting one. Like I'm going to the Symposium for Metabolic Health, and it's really medically focused, and a lot of the latest research in ketogenic diets. Hack Your Health is like a giant party. Like half of it is kind of the conference, the other half of it is all the products and supplements and red light therapies and all this different stuff. And talk about like, yes, there's a subset of carnivores, but it's also like people in keto, people just getting started with metabolic health, people into hacking and other things. And you are absolutely right. Like the carnivore people tend to find each other, and there's just like this another like higher level of like they're a little more energetic, they're a little bit more kind. It's pretty palpable when you get that little subset of like low carb or carnivore people together.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Right. I've been in both worlds. I've been in the keto world, and it is a difference.
Yeah.
I don't know how you started. Did you start with keto as well?
Yeah, pretty typical where you go,
Yeah.
you start to learn that like fat is not bad for you, and then carbs are kind of not necessary. And you start with low carb or paleo, and you're putting, an avocado in a salad and some olive oil, and you're not afraid of that anymore. And then, transition into carnivore and eventually, or I'm sorry, keto, and then you eventually find carnivore.
Right.
So that's kind of how I transitioned, pretty typical. And yeah, we're going to talk all about you and your story today, because I'd love to hear about your own transition. And I told you this off air. This is so funny, but there is an actress with your same name, DianeLadd. And so anytime
Yes.
I punched anything up to like hear a
Ah,
conversation with you, whoever this actress is, I don't know if she's like super famous or not, but she would
yes,
come up and I couldn't
she
find you.
is. She is.
Is
She's
she?
she's much older than me,
Okay.
and she causes me so much problems because I could get nothing with my name on it. So, I was looking for my channel and I wanted DianeLadd. I'm like, oh, I can't have DianeLadd. And then, okay, Boston Carnivore. Couldn't have Boston Carnivore because there is another Boston Carnivore that does not post anything. It just has the
Really?
channel. So I had to combine both names in order to create my unique space. So that's what I did.
Got it. Well, I'm so glad you sent that over to me. Once I found it, I found your channel, and you do an awesome job with your content. Your content looks really,
Oh,
really
thank you
good.
so
So
much.
I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad Robert Kiltz convinced you to at least try a YouTube channel, and you've done a great job with it. So
Yeah,
kudos to you. And yeah, unfortunate about the actress that's caused you so much grief over the years.
grief.
So funny. Well, I want to go back to your story. Obviously, you've got a story of personal health, but also an interest in kind of what is like emerging as a field of like psychiatry, metabolic psychiatry, behavior
Right.
therapies. You were very interested in those behavior therapies. So, how did that start for you in your life, and how eventually did you get to issues with your own health?
Well, Casey, I've always been in kind of like a helping field, helping people to reach their goals and to reach, things that they wanted to do. Years ago, I was a personal trainer and I was an exercise consultant and also a group exercise person. And did that through my 20s and 30s. Um, then had children and was a stay-at-home mom for about 10 years. And after that, I decided to become a coach. And I became an ADHD coach and helped people with ADHD, helping them to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And after a little while, I decided to go back to school and to become a mental health counselor. So I finished my bachelor degree, I got my master's degree. And shortly after that, that's when the health issues started with me. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, formally diagnosed 2 years after I graduated from Boston College with my master's in social work. Um, and I mean, I kept going. I wasn't going to let it stop me, but eventually it did. Eventually it did. But it was 2016. I graduated in 2014, and in 2016, a doctor said, "You have multiple sclerosis." So that was like a defining point for me.
Got it.
in 2016.
What kinds of signs and symptoms did you know that something was kind of wrong?
There's such a random amount of symptoms for someone who is starting with MS. It started, I was driving in a car and I felt like I was flying in a plane. I felt like I was going up and down, like these strange sensations. I had trouble balancing. My vision was a little wonky, a little bit strange. Reading was difficult, following the lines on reading a book, like I would be skipping lines. And then what happened was I started getting this speech thing that would happen. And it happened when someone asked me a question. So, in other words, when I was in class, I was always the annoying person in the back of the room raising my hand, answering a question. And I go to answer the question, and I would get like a slurred speech. So that was troubling. And all of these things kind of added up. And I went to a doctor and he said, well, I see on your MRI, because he took an MRI, I see that there are some lesions, which that word was pretty scary. And he said, but, there's not many. And let's take another MRI in 8 months. So I waited and I took another MRI. And then meanwhile, I was getting tons of vertigo symptoms, like spinning. It was just ridiculous. So I went to a PCP that said, "No, I don't think it's related to the MRI that you had. I think it's vertigo. Let's just keep an eye on it." So everyone just wanted to keep an eye on everything. No one wanted to diagnose me. Not that I even wanted a diagnosis, but I just wanted to know what was going on. So it was February of 2016 after several tests, nerve conduction tests, a test where they put you in a chair and spun it around to see how you would do, and that was a nightmare. And a spinal tap, but it was an eye doctor that diagnosed me with multiple sclerosis in February of 2016.
Wow.
So
The
that
diagnosis that sounds terrible. The things they had to do does not sound fun.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole thing was terrible. Getting the diagnosis was horrible. The test that led to it, and then having someone say that to you was horrible because they make sure they tell you there is no cure. We can only give you these very strong medications that may help it not to progress. Only 40% chance, the highest medication, that it won't progress to the next level. And there is no cure, and it's only going to get worse.
Wow.
So that in itself is enough. That's bad.
So I've got a client. Her father was, diagnosed with something really challenging. And basically, he did a few rounds of treatment, and the doctor basically told him that there's nothing else they could do. They tried everything. It's going to get worse. And he's basically like, go home, get your things in order. He mentioned hospice. And my client described the father as like sitting up in his chair and, being alert and aware and just slumping and slumping and slumping and slumping into a full on like trauma posture, and says that he's been like in his chair for the last week and a half doing nothing
Mm,
because they told him in a way that provides like absolutely no hope. And
right.
I kept questioning her, like, I know they need to communicate that these things are challenging, but is there a way to maybe communicate this a little bit better to not take hope away from somebody? Like, he's going to die of hopelessness more than he's going to die of this disease. It sounds like it was presented to you in a very similar way.
Yeah. And I think it was presented to me because I kept on searching for something, you know? And I think it comes from being in the background that I was, being an exercise person, being a diet person, being, searching for all these answers and going back to school as an adult and learning and reading studies and all of that. I was like, there's got to be something I could do, right? There's got to be something. Is there some kind of diet? Because I saw all these different diets. I followed the Walls diet. I did that for a while. Oh no, that won't help you. There's nothing that will help. Like they're so definitely sure you can try it. It might make you feel better, but it's not going to cure the multiple sclerosis.
Wow.
So I just wouldn't accept that, Casey. I could not accept that. I tried everything. I did all kinds of searching, and I suppose, it was like 9 years between the time that I got the diagnosis and the time when I just started the carnivore diet. So I wasn't searching the entire 9 years, but there came a time, 2022, it was August. I'm coming up on that anniversary now, that we had just gone through the time where clinicians had to go online because we couldn't meet people face to face. And I had an office, and I ended up closing that office and met with all my clients face to face. And it was just, I was getting more and more fatigued. My brain fog was getting worse and worse. I could feel the downturn in how I was behaving, how I was reacting, how I was moving. I've always been very aware of my body, and I've always been an exerciser, always lifted weights, all of that, but it was becoming more and more challenging to do those things. And I had a conversation with my husband, and I said, I think I'm going to have to take a sabbatical. I thought it was going to be like a couple of weeks, maybe a month, to kind of like regroup, maybe do some meditation, maybe do some, I don't know. I was trying to figure something out. But those 2 weeks, 4 weeks turned into 3 years. I didn't work from that point on because I had to heal myself, and I did some searching. And it wasn't until the fall of 2023 that I really, I had, it was like I couldn't stand it anymore. And I just really cried out to God, and I said, please heal this MS. And shortly after that, I think it was Ken Berry that I saw his video on healing autoimmune disease came on. I went to YouTube, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. All meat? I can't do all meat. That's ridiculous. That is crazy. So I just kept on watching, but I wasn't buying it. I was like, you have to eat vegetables. I had already given up the carb thing, right? Because I was sensitive to carbohydrates, and I had plantar fasciitis for years. And so, yeah, I knew that it helped with that. And I had a few things like eczema, and, it helped with my weight to give up the carbs. So I had already given them up, but I was eating the low carb vegetables, side salad. And it wasn't until March 5th, 2024, that I decided to give up the side salad, give up the broccoli and the cauliflower, and give this thing a try, because there would be no way of knowing if this thing worked unless I tried it 100%. And I had to be ready to try it 100%. And and I'll remember this, Casey, because usually every diet that I've ever been on has started on a Monday. I'm sure all your listeners know. You
Of
have a
course.
weekend, and you're like, okay, Monday, I'm going to do it. This was a Tuesday, and you can look it up to, fact check me. It was Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, that I woke up and I said, no, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Wow.
And I went out and bought my meat, and I only ate meat. And 3 weeks later, my brain fog lifted, my fatigue started to leave me. And it was that 3 week mark that it was just unbelievable. It was like I went to bed one day, woke up the next day, and things were totally different. Like I was living in a different reality. It was
Wow.
just amazing. It
It's
was
incredible.
undeniable.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Yes, every diet does start Monday. If you're familiar with the famous Saturday Night Live skit with like Chris Farley and Adam Sandler, when I think Chris Farley's eating somebody's fries and yells, "Lay off me, I'm starving." Goes, diet starts Monday. So
That's right.
that is true. And yeah, one of my favorite quotes from a former guest on our show said basically, if you don't think a carnivore diet is weird at first, then I think you're weird. Like it goes against everything that we're told. And so, yeah, I remember the first time I heard it was Sean Baker on Joe Rogan, and I turned it off halfway through because I'm like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Come on,
Right.
nuts.
How could you live without vegetables? That
Exactly.
like I really didn't think that you could live. You're gonna get
Yeah.
scurvy. What else are you gonna get?
Yeah. You're never going to poop again for
I
sure. You'll definitely have a heart
never.
attack. Like, yeah, of course. Um, okay. So most of my listeners probably know this, and I'm a little bit more ignorant to it. So I'm curious to know as far as you understand it, what exactly is MS? And I also want to talk about how the rheumatoid arthritis kind of tied into this as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So, MS is an autoimmune disease, which means your body attacks itself, which that alone, when you're diagnosed with that, that's a tough thing to wrap your brain around. My body is attacking itself. Why would I do that? So, your immune system attacks the myelin sheath, which is a coating on each nerve cell. It's like the plastic on an electrical cord that you can plug into the wall from a lamp, right? So the energy comes from the light socket and lights the lamp up. If that cord is frayed, the energy might not pass through the cord and the light may not turn on. So every single cell, billions of neurons in your brain, each one is coated with a myelin sheath. In MS, your body attacks the myelin sheath and makes it fray. So once the myelin sheath becomes totally frayed, the nerve cell will die because it needs it. And a group of nerve cells in one area will die. And then that creates a lesion that you can see on an MRI. And that just means that a group of brain cells have died and that these neural networks, so you have networks of neurons that go throughout your brain that support different behaviors, different activities. So, in other words, if you learn to ride your bike as a child, right? So that's something you never ever forget. So when you start to ride your bike, it's very difficult. You can remember your parents trying to teach you and, pedal down, pedal up, hold on the handlebars, turn right and left. There comes a point where that comes naturally and that you can do that as an adult, even, 30, 40 years later. You can do this thing and you haven't been on a bike in years and years and years. You can get on a bike and you can ride. That's because of your brain. That's because your brain formed these neural networks across the brain that support that activity. And it's like that for everything. If you learn a dance step, if you're driving in your car and you know a route to go from home to work, that is a neural network. So what happens in the MS brain when the myelin sheath frays and a group of neurons die and there's a lesion, that might interrupt a neural network. It might interrupt a neural network for standing and walking. It might interrupt one for seeing, for hearing, because everything that you do, everything that you are, starts in your brain. So, like the doctor told me when I was diagnosed, you may, have difficulty walking. You might end up with a cane. You might be in a wheelchair. You might go deaf. You might go blind. You might forget things. So that is a very scary thing. Your brain is so important to who you are. You need to keep that. So that's what happens in MS, that it's the whole neurons and the neural network and the myelin sheath. They all kind of interplay with each other to cause disease or to cause health.
Wow. That was a wonderful explanation. Thank you for doing that. Is there a typical time when this is diagnosed in somebody's life? Like, does this happen at any period? Can it happen to teenagers? Is it just people as we age? Like, when can that diagnosis happen? Typically,
It typically happens in the 20s.
20s.
Yeah, 20s and 30s, people start to have symptoms. I did not. I was
Okay.
diagnosed much later in life. I wasn't diagnosed until I was 50. So that is very unusual. Looking back, there were maybe a few symptoms that I experienced here and there, like 5, 10 years before, that kind of resolved themselves. And that's what's called relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis. So you'll have a relapse of symptoms and then they kind of go away. So people might experience like an annoying symptom, like maybe their arm goes numb or their foot goes numb and it's numb for maybe a few weeks and then comes back and they're like, well, that was weird. That could be a start of MS. And I don't want people to get nervous if their foot is numb. There could be 100 different reasons for that, but that could happen. Or urinary incontinence is a very popular thing to happen, and then that goes away. So, um, you know, And the thing about MS, why it's so hard to diagnose, is because there are so many groups of symptoms that can happen that that are kind of random, and they kind of don't go together, and they're kind of weird. So, you know, I don't think the doctors want to diagnose it right away because they don't have a cure. So that's kind of the thought I got. Like when that first doctor said, "Well, you have a few lesions in your brain, but let's just watch it and see." It's not normal to have lesions in your brain. So, that probably should have been diagnosed right away, especially where there is a certain region of the brain, like I think it's around the middle part where the lesions occur, that is indicative of multiple sclerosis. And sometimes people who have random lesions like here or there that just kind of show up, but when they're indicative of multiple sclerosis, they kind of like are more centrally located.
Got it. Okay. Again, that was very well explained. And then at what stage did the rheumatoid arthritis side of things kick in as well?
So, Casey, once you are diagnosed with one autoimmune disease, most likely you are diagnosed with a second and sometimes a third. Sometimes this happens, but it's very unusual just to have one. So, this happened. It was a year before. So it was 2023. And it's really funny because I have a picture of myself that I was in the hospital, and I'll tell you why. And I was looking at myself. I was on my phone. I'm like, I'm just gonna take a picture and document this. So I took a picture of myself. It was March 5th, 2023. It was exactly 1 year before I started the carnivore diet. I was in the hospital. And I was in the hospital because I had a kidney stone, which I would not wish that on my worst enemy.
I've
That's
heard.
not a fun thing. And that fall, prior to that, I started getting swollen ankles, one swollen ankle. And I thought that, what is going on with this one ankle? And I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was my Achilles tendon. I was going to a physical therapist. Then all of a sudden, both ankles started swelling, which the physical therapist didn't say much, but he's like, "You need to get this checked out by a rheumatologist." I was like, "A rheumatologist?" If you have bilateral ankle swelling, wrist swelling, elbow swelling, if it's bilateral, most likely it's rheumatoid arthritis. And I didn't know that. So that was diagnosed the spring of 2023. And as this is getting diagnosed, I was given some steroids. So this is when the cure causes another problem. So I was given steroids, and from the steroids, I had swelling, not swelling, I had an ulcer in my esophagus that just got bigger and bigger and bigger. I was unable to eat. So I didn't eat hardly anything for a month, lost 20 pounds. I was very, very sick, rheumatoid arthritis, and then I get a kidney stone on top of that. So I was in the hospital for the kidney stone, but I wasn't eating, so I was on an IV, and I was very, very, very sick. So that was an incident. That was, when you hear of people having sarcopenia, muscle wasting, and how that affects their life and their overall health. At the time, how old was I? I was like 57, 58. So, not a spring chicken. So, you need to keep that muscle going. You need to lift weights. You need to keep yourself healthy. Lost 20 pounds. Most of it was muscle. And rheumatoid arthritis, a kidney stone, and an ulcer in my esophagus. So that was like a turning point for me where I was very, very sick. And it
Wow.
took a long time to dig out of that. It took a long time to go back to the gym and to exercise when I really could even walk on a treadmill and lift weights and trying to dig out of that hole of just totally being not healthy. And that's on top of the MS, right? So this is something that I probably haven't talked about much on anyone else's podcast because there's just so much, right? It's just there's so much going on. And so this was like another layer on top of it that really contributed to me just, coming home from the hospital after 4 days in bed in the hospital and not being able to climb 3 steps to my house. I needed help with that. I needed help with that. And it shows you that it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to just weaken your body.
The layers thing that you just mentioned really hits home. Like to feel like your mind isn't working the way that it was and you wanted, physically that your body isn't working the way that you wanted. Like that's terrible. I mean, I could see how a lot of people would give up in that situation. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just be like, this is not worth it if this is continuing to slide down and there's not a lot of hope. Yeah, it's tragic, but I could understand why somebody would not want to go through that, and why they'd want to give up. On the kidney stone, did they ever tell you what it was made of? Like, was it an oxalate
Yes.
kidney stone?
Yes. Yes. It was my second one, Casey, because I had 2 years before that, I had a kidney stone as well. And fortunately, I was able to, well, I don't know how fortunate it was, but I was able to pass that one. It wasn't as big as the second one. The second one was so big, they had to put a stent in. I had to go through surgery, and then they had to take the stent out and remove the stone. And they also removed another one that was in my kidney. They removed that out as well. So yeah, oxalates, and it's interesting because I had a call with Sally K. Norton, and I talked to her about what had happened with my ankles, the kidney stone, the MS, the whole, I went through everything with her. It was on a group call. And she said, oh, yeah, that could be all oxalates. And she said, did you ever have the ankle tested to see if it was rheumatoid arthritis? I said, funny enough, he put this very long needle in my ankle. It was horrible, but he wasn't able to get the fluid out to test it. So I never knew if it was really, really rheumatoid arthritis, or it could have been they call it pseudo gout from oxalate poisoning, which it could have been that, it could have been that. But as far as oxalates, gosh, I was eating that fall. I was having these spinach smoothies. Like
Oh
I
my
was
goodness.
stuffing that spinach in this big tall container and the magic bullet where you turn over and it blends everything up with blueberries and almond milk and making stuff with almond flour and eating handfuls of almonds. I was eating so many oxalates. And so what happened is when I couldn't eat anymore, when I had that
Yep.
month of not eating, the oxalates dumped into my system and wreaked havoc with me. Totally wreaked havoc. So that was the event. It was oxalates.
That is absolutely incredible. Sally K. Norton, what an absolute angel. Somebody I've also been really fortunate enough to meet in person. She's just
Mm.
wonderful. But that is crazy. I think about that blender. We all used to look at that blender and think, oh, this is so healthy. I would have different colored beets and all the
Oh my
greens
gosh.
and
The
the almond milk, like you
rainbow. The
said.
rainbow,
Yes.
Casey.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's crazy. The oxalate thing is absolutely crazy. And the amounts that are just in spinach and the amounts that you can grind up in a blender, that would be catastrophic amounts of oxalate.
It
And the thing that I'll do, like most people, if I start talking about oxalate, they look at me like I got a second head growing out of my shoulders. But what I say to most people is, in your head, take the piece of raw spinach, chew it up in your mouth, and what do you feel in your mouth? And most people can recognize, like, yeah, there's like a grittiness, or
pretty.
it's a little bit sharp, and it's like those are oxalate crystals. That's
Yeah.
not even the most harmful form of oxalate that gets in the body.
And then another layer to this, Casey, is that my eyes at the same time, my eyes swelled up like I was unrecognizable. I had these bags down to my cheekbones, and inside my eyes, I had all these styes, and my eyes were red and gritty. And I didn't know it at the time, but I think the oxalates were coming out of my eyeballs, the crystals. And I was diagnosed with, oh, you have, styes, you have, irritation, do you have allergies? I went to 5 different eye doctors. I thought it was the MS because MS you have problems with your eyes for MS. They're like, oh, no, it's not the MS, but 5 different eye doctors. And no one could come up with an explanation of this. And it took time. It took a lot, even after being on the carnivore diet, it took probably 6, 7 months. Every once in a while they would balloon up and then they would come down again and then they would balloon up. I think it was just the oxalates just coming out of my body
Yep.
that it was just the most incredible thing. That and the eczema, those were two things that kind of swelled and then went down, but now I have no eczema on my hands.
Amazing.
And
Wow.
yeah, so there was so many things. Not even to mention, I was getting steroid injections for my back because I had, I had, what is it called when you have the back problem down your leg?
Oh, sciatica?
Sciatica. Yeah, I couldn't think of the
Yeah,
word.
yeah.
Sciatica and arthritis in my back. And I would book it. I would book it because you had to book it like every 6 or 7 months and you couldn't go lower than 6 months. So like 6.5 months, I would schedule it just in case I had pain because the pain would just come back after 6 months. So every 6 or 7 months, I would have steroid injections for my back. I haven't had a steroid injection since I started the carnivore diet.
Amazing. Wow, that's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I know stories of people who went hard into veganism, vegetarianism, who years they could still be having dumping symptoms that come kind of as you're describing, like a wave here and there. And I can't remember if it was Monique Attinger or if it was Sally K. Norton that explained like any way that your body can excrete anything, eyes, nose, mouth, ears,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything that's where oxalate can leave the body through your breath, like all kinds of different stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, what an absolute nightmare. You described trying all the different diets. You took about as much time, kind of as I did, to like even consider a carnivore diet before I wanted to try it. But what were some of the steps in your kind of comprehension of like, yes, I've watched Ken Berry's video. It's still going to take me a few months to kind of wrap my head around this and try this for the first time. Like, what were some of the steps of like understanding that you can try this? Fairly convinced that you're not going to die if you try, you're not going to get scurvy. Yeah, what was that process like for you?
It's interesting because I have 5 steps to carnivore mindset. It's the mindset. It's all in your head. It's all how you think about this, right? So I call the first step in the carnivore mindset, carnivore is crazy because that's what everyone thinks. Carnivore is crazy. I can't do that. This is a crazy diet. This is, a fad diet, whatever. But people, that is their first, and I see it for everyone that I talk to, like all of my friends, all of my relatives, whatever, like they kind of give you the side eye, right? It's like carnivore is crazy. And they go back to, I could never do that. And I want to say, I didn't tell you to do it. you
Good point.
right? So step one isn't really a step because you're not moving anywhere, but you're just kind of staying still. Carnivore is crazy, right? The second step I call the spinning circle. And that's where the magic starts to happen. It's like after watching Ken Berry, I was like, kind of was crazy. And then the next breath, I was like, yeah, but it kind of makes a little bit of sense. Because what I know about the keto diet is, these things happen to your blood sugar and these things happen to your insulin. And you start to think about that. So you're spinning in one direction, kind of like your computer when you turn it on and it starts in one program, it doesn't go to the next program, and you get that little spinning circle. You start spinning and you're like, huh, that makes sense. Then it spins backwards and oh no, carnivore is crazy. So you go back to step one again, right? So you're in that spinning circle, not quite moving forward, kind of moving back a little bit, but always moving forward again, right? And the third step is called planning, carnivore plan. You have to plan. You have to buy the meat in order to eat it. You have to go to the grocery store. You have to figure out what am I going to eat? How am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? So that's all the carnivore planning. And that's the third step. And the fourth step is where the rubber meets the road. That's where you just kind of go forward. That was March 5th, 2024, when you just challenge yourself. And I call it the challenge. Challenge yourself for 30 days. Try this thing, try it exactly, try it. And when I say try, I don't mean kind of do it. I mean exactly do it for 30 days. See what happens to your body. See what happens to your brain. Just see. After 30 days, if nothing happens, then you can choose. Do it for another 30 days or stop doing it. But you're never going to know until you challenge yourself and try this thing. And that's step 4. Step 5 is the way of eating. It just becomes the way you live, the way you eat. It becomes your diet. And I know that happened to me for the first time when my husband and I went to a restaurant and I was trying to order my meal and I was being very specific about, I don't want salad. I don't want any side. You don't want any sides? No, I don't want any sides. And you're going back and forth. Well, we have broccoli. No, I don't want broccoli. I just want my ribeye. That's all I want. And I turned to her and I said, I'm a carnivore. And my husband just kind of choked. After she left, she goes, you realize you told the waitress you're a carnivore, right? I'm like, yeah, I kind of did. That means I arrived. That means I am there. I've identified myself with my way of eating. And to me, it was just wonderful. To him, it was a little horrifying, but to me, it was wonderful. And just to tell you, he's a carnivore too. He eats a little bit of yogurt with a few blueberries on it every night. But yeah, he eats what I cook. So what else is he gonna do?
Wow. I love that. How far in was that encounter with the waitress?
Oh my gosh, I remember the restaurant I was in, but I don't remember how far that was in. It maybe it was like 4 or 5 months at the most.
I
Yeah.
somewhere between 3 and 6 months is where most people like really
Yeah.
settle into that fifth step that you're describing. And like, this is this is not hard. This is easy. This is delicious. This is inexpensive. I'm not that hungry. You're
Yeah.
noticing all these other amazing benefits. Yeah, it's about that
So
time frame.
it's simple, Casey. It's a simple diet. I mean, grocery shopping is very simple. You just go to the meat counter, right? Maybe you get a few dairy and meat and, cleaning products, you know. But that's all you do. You don't have to walk up and down. You don't have to do the treadmill of the grocery store anymore. And it's very, very simple. I prefer to keep it simple. I don't do those crazy recipes for the carnivore pancakes, the carnivore lasagna, the carnivore this, the carnivore that, because you know what? It reminds me of how I used to eat, and I set myself up for cravings. If I'm looking at a pizza, whether it's made out of chicken or whether it's made out of whatever pizzas are made of, I don't want to say too many words, but it's going to put that image in my mind. It's going to set me up to be wanting those type of foods. So I did a few of those things and I just prefer to eat the way I eat, to eat my diet.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm happy.
I'm so glad that people put out those recipes and
Yes.
there's amazing cookbooks and there's different approaches out there. And I'm so grateful for them. We've interviewed a ton of them. They contribute tons to our field. And
Especially at first. Especially at
especially at
first.
first. That's
Yes.
exactly right. Yep. Or you have families, you want them to eat a little bit more protein forward or
I couldn't imagine having
carnivore-ish.
kids at home. I don't have kids at home right now, but having kids at home, you would need that. You would
Yeah,
definitely, definitely need
totally.
that.
Totally. And all of that said, you're so right. Once you get to a certain point, like beef and salt just taste really good. And you kind of don't need the taste of other things, but also like you appreciate the taste of what's there. And the simplicity of it, like I said, is just so much better, like you mentioned. So take us through like a normal day of eating for you on a carnivore diet. Like what would be typical for you?
It's really boring, Casey. It's really, really simple. Most mornings I will fast. If I have breakfast, it's later. So if I have breakfast, it'll be like 10 or 11 o'clock. And eggs, maybe. Egg yolks a lot. Like I'll go very, very high fat. I keep a very, very high fat diet. That's what works best for my brain. So like this morning I had, but today, today's a fasting day, but when I do fasting days, I will do some fat in that. So today what I did is 3 egg yolks and 2 tablespoons of butter. So I made a browned the butter and put the yolks in it. And I just had 3 egg yolks with the butter. It was very
Yum.
delicious. So that is my high fat day. So I consider my high fat day like a pseudo fasting day. I test my ketones in my blood every single day. I use a Keto Mojo. So I know when my ketones are going down and my blood glucose is going up, because there comes a time when everything's good and then it starts going up, eating a carnivore diet. So then I have to do a fast. And it's about once a week. Once a week, I'll do, maybe one day I'll do like a fat fast, and the next day I'll do a fast, maybe have breakfast and the rest of the day not eat at all. Um, so that was this morning, but typically I'll maybe have some ground beef, like maybe a quarter pound of ground beef, and I'll add a couple of eggs to that. Um, that could be my breakfast. I like to do a lot of ground beef, so I'll do ground beef for lunch, quarter to a half a pound. And for dinner, it's most of the time a steak. Sometimes I'll do like a chuck roast and put it in the Instapot. Sometimes a hamburger. My husband still likes to eat chicken. So when I have chicken, what I'll do is I'll make it like a side dish. So I'll make some chicken wings and I'll make a steak and I'll have a couple of chicken wings with the steak. When I find my blood glucose is going up a little, I'll cut back a little bit on the protein, maybe have a half a ribeye steak rather than the ribeye. So I really kind of gauge it to what my blood glucose and my ketones are doing, and kind of, I'm kind of playing with it a little bit, because last March when I got the Keto Mojo, I was not in ketosis. After following the carnivore diet for an entire year, I was not in ketosis because I was eating too much protein. So
Protein.
that's why I kind of pay attention to how much I'm eating, add a bunch of fat. I use Carb Manager app to kind of gauge, like, not, I don't weigh and measure like religiously, but when I find that I'm being kicked out of ketosis or my ketones are going down a little bit, I will start to weigh and measure things so that I can put myself back into ketosis. So it's like this little balancing act that I do. Um, and it does leave room to like go out to dinner and have, a big porterhouse steak, or, have some fun, go to a special butcher that we like, and buy a big ribeye and kind of enjoy that. But I'm just kind of learning. I'm still, after 17 months, I'm just kind of still learning what my body is doing in response to the protein and fat that I'm eating and how it functions its best. And I find like today is, I had yesterday fasting, this morning fasting, my brain is going really fast, and I can feel that my speech is really fast too. Like I have to kind of gauge that and slow it down a little bit. And I can also feel if I'm taking a walk, like we like to walk around the neighborhood, we have 2 dogs. And if I'm walking around the neighborhood, I can feel the difference in how I'm walking, like especially when my ketones are really low and my blood sugar's up. I feel a little bit like I'm walking slower, almost like through water or through mud. And when my ketones are super high, I'm gliding. Like there's
Wow.
the sensation of like gliding through the neighborhood. And also lifting weights, I'm stronger. I'm definitely stronger when my ketones are up. So there is a big difference. I'm trying to make sense of it for myself, trying to and it's interesting because when, for myself, trying to make sense of it, then getting a handle around speaking about it so I can speak about it on my YouTube channel, and then getting another handle around it so I could teach it. So there's all these layers of it. And at the very beginning, when you're just learning yourself, it's really hard to even speak about it because you really don't know what you're talking about. Right? Because
Right.
you're just experiencing it for yourself. And that's how this whole thing has been my experience, right? This is how I have experienced the carnivore diet. What has happened to my brain? What has happened to my body? And hopefully somebody else can learn about that and can benefit their own life. That's my hope. And
I
that's why I
love that.
can't shut up about it, Casey. I can't shut up. I can't just go back to being a therapist, working in an office, And when you're working with insurance, I can't talk about ketogenic diet working with insurance. I can't use that as a treatment modality because that's not on the DSM. It's not on you can't write that down in your notes. You can't bill insurance companies for that. And that's why doctors aren't talking about it.
Yeah. It's a terrible system, and more people need to know about it. And there's so many people in this space that have done what you are doing. You learn it, you get it in your life, you want to share, you want to get more educated so that you can put that out there. I was going to ask you about your practice. Is that ever something you think you're going to get back to, or it really is the system would prevent you from giving people the truth?
I think the system would prevent me from giving people the truth. And so that's why I want to move into the coaching field more so that I can teach this. Not so much teach this, but support other people because if someone wants to know about the carnivore diet, they can find out about the carnivore diet. There's enough people talking about it. There's enough books written about it. There's enough how to do this thing, right? How to eat fatty red meat. It's really, really simple. Really, really simple. You just eat animal products and butter and eggs. You just eat that. That's the simple part. But it's not easy, right? So the part that's not easy is life. The part that's not easy is when you go to your mother's house and she's cooked something that's not on the menu, not on your menu. It's on her menu, but it's not on your menu. And she looks at you like, oh, honey, you're getting too skinny. It's time you should eat this now. You did that for long enough, right? How do you deal with that? What do
Yeah.
you do? What do you say? How do you feel? Those are the things that people need help with. Those are the things when they go to a restaurant and you take the time to order your hamburger with no bun and french fries, and they bring you a hamburger on a bun with french fries, with ketchup already on it, and a pickle. What do? You're with your business colleagues and you don't want to make a scene. You don't want to make a scene. So you take the cover off and you look at this little brown shriveled thing that they gave you, and it's not even big enough to, you know, you would eat that walking by your refrigerator in the middle of the day. It's not a
Totally.
meal. It's not a meal. So what do? How do you conduct yourself? What is your behavior when faced with challenges like that? Those are the things that I want to help people with. Those are the things that are in my realm. Those are the thoughts, the emotions, the behaviors, and the beliefs with CBT therapy, right? That's what CBT is. And those are the things that are so beneficial to people. And I've been on so many wonderful calls of carnivores teaching the carnivore diet in these big arenas. I would liken it to like when you go to college and you've got that big hall where so many people are meeting, like hundreds of students, and the teachers just teaching to the masses how to carnivore, how to eat this thing, right? And you've got all these questions coming up, and you've got, what about my LDL cholesterol? What about scurvy? My doctor doesn't like this. How do I do this? How do I, what do I have for breakfast? What do I have for lunch? What do I have? Like those type of questions. I feel like that's not my wheelhouse. Like I feel like there's so many people that can do that. So many people that are so qualified for that. What I want to help people with is to say, what is stopping you from following this diet? What is doing that? And like hearing that answer, like, well, I just I go out with my buddies and we go out for beers. And what am I supposed to do? That conversation is something that I am so interested in helping people about. It's the societal stuff, it's the family stuff, it's the friendship stuff that really, I think that that's what trips people up because they have that one beer and they're back.
Yep.
They're back to the nachos. They're back to the whatever they eat or whatever they ate previously. They're back to the sad diet immediately. And that is just, to me, that's sad because they put so much work into keeping this thing clean, keeping this diet clean for themselves and for their health. And all it takes sometimes is just one slip up and people are back to square one.
Yep. See it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a well-meaning incident. It's not that there's these nefarious people around every corner wanting to ruin your diet, but it's life.
Yeah.
And I know that for myself. And it's so, so hard. And even like, going to a party that has a buffet, I do really well. And from the beginning, I was okay. Like, because I could bring something, I could just pick and choose what I eat. Especially if no one's sitting around a table and you could just walk around and you can hold your seltzer and you can make it look like wine. Because I've put it in a wine glass and I've had friends say, "Would you like another wine?" I'm like, "No, I'm all set." So you can make yourself see, you can make yourself seem like you blend in. But when you're sitting at a dining room table with people and there's a certain menu, that gets tough. That gets
Yep.
really tough, and you get singled out. And it's important to realize it's important for people to learn how to deal with that, right? And there's some tricks like the conversation always comes, for me, always came back to me. So they see me just choosing the roast beef and not choosing the potatoes or the green beans or the salad or the whatever. And they say, "You're not going to eat that?" "Nope. Sorry, I don't eat that." "You don't eat that?" "No." "Since when?" Then I have to say when I started. "Wow, you mean you don't eat?" Then they have the list. "Do you eat avocados? Do you eat nuts? You must eat nuts. Nuts have protein." So then you are like spotlight, right? The whole room is looking at you. Half the people looking at you side-eyed, half are not listening because they're kind of disgusted already, but half are like really intently looking at you. So it's a really uncomfortable place to be.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
you're right.
turning the conversation around to the other person, that is my
That's
strategy.
good strategy. That's good
Yeah, I'd be
strategy.
like, "So what do you eat?" "What did you
That's
have for lunch yesterday?"
Yeah, no, that's great strategy. We hosted the carnivore rabbi, Evan is his name, and he said that like he has to go as a rabbi, he's got to go to all kinds of social events, and
Oh my
people try to feed him
gosh.
all the time. And what you're saying is more true, I think. Like people do get a little bit worked up about the things you eat, but when one of the things that he suggested, he's like, the nice thing is people are always thinking about themselves to the point that maybe they react a certain way, but after a little while, like they don't care. They care about what they're doing and what they're eating and how they look to other people. But yeah, I think it's so cool that you can look around and see your place in the community. Like all of us have a different voice, a different background, something to add. We need the researchers to look at lean mass hyperresponders and figure out if LDL cholesterol
Absolutely.
causes heart attacks. We need that. That's not you, that's not me, but you know what your gift is. And with your background and everything you've done with behavior, you're going to have an amazing impact in this community, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. It's so cool that you're able to recognize that now.
Thank you, Casey. I appreciate that. And it's been kind of a long time coming, because I've tried to like kind of put myself in places of these big arenas with a lot of people, and I just get very anxious. I get very kind of frustrated. I've tried a lot of different things, and I'm like, well, maybe this isn't for me at all, and maybe I'll just stay with my YouTube channel, which would be fine, But the more I think about this thing, and the more I kind of explore it, I'm realizing my place, and I appreciate that you said that. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're just so perfectly suited for that, which I absolutely love. I've got one last thing to ask you about. Most women around your age, which you don't look your age at all, by the way, but most women around
Thank
your
you.
age, when they hear you say, "Oh, I should be lifting weights," they will probably say, "Well, I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to add too much muscle." Well, how do you tell people that strength training is the most important thing, and no, you will not be bulky if you're a female and you lift weights?
Weightlifting, yes, you are correct. Weightlifting is the most important thing a woman over 50 can do. Most important because muscle wasting sarcopenia. Once your muscles waste away, you're screwed. you you are at risk for hip fractures. You are at risk for hip replacements, knee replacements, and similar to my episode where I was in bed for 4 days in the hospital. You go through knee surgery, knee replacement surgery, you're muscle wasting even more. So just to give you to build muscle after age 50 is a very, very difficult thing. Starting the carnivore diet, eating not so much high protein, but high fat, but moderate protein. That's all I eat is fat and protein. For 17 months, I had a DEXA scan, Casey. So I had a DEXA scan last June, the end of June last year. And then I just had another one a couple of weeks ago. I lost from that time to this time, I lost 15 pounds of fat and gained 0 pounds of muscle. Zero. Working out 3 to 5 times a week as a 60-year-old woman. And I talked to my brother who he works out all the time. And I was like kind of really upset because I wanted to gain, and I feel like I've gained muscle because I feel more definition. And it could be because the fat is gone and there's muscle underneath it. Maybe I there were two different DEXA scans that I got on, so maybe there was a few pounds that it didn't show. I don't know, but anyway, he said it's very, very, very difficult to gain muscle, and the fact that you lost 15 pounds of fat and didn't lose an ounce of muscle is huge at age 60,
Huge.
because most people will lose. I mean, what is your experience? How much muscle would you say if someone lost 15 pounds of weight? And what would you say the percentage
I mean,
would be typically?
classically in personal training, you probably saw it too. It's probably half and half. It's probably half fat and half lean mass,
Okay.
whether that's actual muscle mass, bone density, connective tissue, all the other things in your body that count as lean mass that aren't body fat. It's probably about half. And that's if somebody's following the standard advice, they're reducing their calories, they're increasing their caloric burn. That was my experience in using body fat scales over the years of personal
Okay.
training. And what you're describing, like to lose fat exclusively to
Right.
preserve muscle and or add muscle is impossible. There's no place in any of my personal training manuals that says that you can do that. And I see it just like you over and over and over and over and over again. And I would agree with you. Maybe the DEXs were a little different, whatever. But to even just preserve the muscle you have is so important. So yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree with you. Do you think that sounds about right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And my body shape has totally changed. Totally. Because going through menopause, I had the little menopause belly, and and my legs were thinner, getting that shape, coming in, everything changed. Everything like totally reshaped itself. It was like such a transformation. Even when the weight itself, like at the very beginning, when the weight wasn't very different, probably like 10 pounds, it changed. So all in all, I've lost 25 pounds because I had the DEXA scan after I had lost that initial 8 to 10 pounds. So I've lost 25 pounds, probably all fat,
Wow.
and maintained my muscle. So
I see it over and over and over and over again. When somebody chooses to eat this way, you can lose exclusively fat and preserve and or build muscle mass. And I used to challenge people when I was working at a big corporate gym to come in, pay attention to the people. You'll see them, repeatedly every morning or whatever. Pay attention to the people in the cardio section, and then go pay attention to people in the weightlifting section and see which physique you think you want. And then you
right.
probably want to try to go do that
Oh
thing
my
a little bit
gosh.
more.
I see them. They just every day running and walking and stairmaster, and that's all they do, and their arms are so gangly and skinny looking, and they're just trying and trying and trying, and I want to just tap them on the shoulder and say, excuse me, why don't you come over here in this section?
Exactly. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's and I'm not like a weightlifter, heavy lifter, bro. I'm not like putting up all this weight, you know, and it's just, I go up a few pounds, and some days when I'm not feeling as good, I go down a few pounds. It's not like I'm, you know, really into it. I am really into it, but I'm not really into, putting the weight up, like showing off. I remember when I go to Planet Fitness, okay? So it's not like I go to this and they have the lunk alarm. You know about the lunk alarm?
Oh, yes, I've heard of this. Yes.
Well, I dropped a dumbbell like a little too hard and I set off the lunk alarm.
On yourself?
And these guys around me are just killing themselves laughing, like, did you do that? I'm like, yeah.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness.
So, so
That's
yeah.
amazing. Of all the words I could think of to describe you, lunk would not be the very first word that I would consider. Let me tell you, be a little bit further down the list. That's hilarious. Good for you for doing that.
Yeah,
Not missing
didn't
out on a
mean it.
funny moment.
Just happened.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. I couldn't agree more. And good for you for finding strength training and adding that to the lifestyle. What a wonderful story. I am so grateful for Maggie for putting us in touch,
Me
and for
too.
your willingness to share your story. I say it all the time that, like, it's one thing to go through this and have your transformation and keep it for yourself. And it's another to do the really uncomfortable things, like getting a YouTube channel and sharing this with others. You don't have to do that. We all feel that responsibility. We all want to do it, and we do things that we normally wouldn't do. And you are such a great example of that. In whatever capacity you decide to land in, as far as coaching and helping, whether that's on the YouTube or doing private sessions, whatever you land on, you're going to be absolutely amazing at. You've got such a
Thank you,
gift
Casey.
for explaining things very clearly and simply. That was one of the best explanations of multiple sclerosis and what it is I've ever heard. It's very confusing to me, and you made it very simple. And again, just your story is absolutely so inspiring and amazing. So grateful for Maggie for putting us in touch. But for now, Diane, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you in your work?
Right now, I'm exclusively on YouTube at Boston Carnivore DianeLadd, and you can find me there. And from there, you can also get in touch with me if you wish, or you can leave me a comment. You can subscribe to my channel, and you can comment and let me know what you want to see. What type of subjects do you want me to talk about? And
Yeah.
I'm willing to do that.
Perfect. We will link that in the notes so that people can find it. When we first started this podcast, we didn't have the like internet bandwidth to do video, and now we have been for the last several years. And the YouTube channel is so much fun because you can leave comments and we interact with everybody.
Right.
And so, same. If you're listening to this, go to the YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribing to Diane's channel. It's really important that you subscribe, and then leave comments whether you agree with something or disagree with something or have an opinion. Like, to
Right.
hear feedback from the
Oh,
community
I
is
love it.
it's amazing. Yeah,
I
please
love
take
it.
her seriously
Oh,
on that.
and I want to tell you that I met this woman and she lives in Spain. Her name is Rebecca Johnson, and her channel is Cabana Chronicles. And she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis the same year I was diagnosed. We have so many like uncanny coincidences between us. So she interviewed me, I interviewed her, and we have decided to do a live stream. And if you're catching this before the live stream, come and listen, come and watch. So it's going to be the 18th of August at 12 p.m., 12 noon. And the two of us are going to be together and we're going to be talking about all things multiple sclerosis, all things carnivore diet. And then you'll be able to ask us any question you want live, and we will be there to answer you. So that's something exciting that I have coming up that I'd like to tell you about.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Yes, anybody that has this, please go and get the live stream. Will it be available afterwards? I believe this
Yes.
episode is going to be scheduled a little bit later, I
Yes.
think afterwards.
Yes, it
Okay,
will be
perfect.
available on my channel and I believe her channel as well. So come and check it out, Boston Carnivore DianeLadd or Cabana Chronicles,
Perfect.
or both. I mean, she's got a lot of great content on her channel as well. And I'm so grateful to be talking about this. And it's just helping other people heal, other people with multiple sclerosis to know that they don't have to do this thing. They don't have to be ill. They don't have to be sick.
Yeah.
This,
Yeah.
they can follow the carnivore diet and see what happens.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell them they're going to be instantly healed. I'm not going to do that, but I'm saying try it for 30 days and see what happens. It might work, it might not work, but it's worth a try.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. The client I saw yesterday, I've trained her for several years, in her mid 30s, was walking with a cane already from MS. And
Oh,
she decided to try a carnivore diet herself, and she did it strictly for a while. And now she doesn't even need to be strict. And we strength train, and she walks
wow.
perfectly fine and is a completely different person than she was. And so it's not even
That
the
is
first time.
amazing,
It's
Casey.
so cool. Yeah, in her mid 30s, like so young. And just completely transformed her life. And she's can show up for her daughter and is there for her husband, and they take trips all over the place and all kinds of stuff. So it is absolutely
Oh, it makes such a
transformative.
difference. It's the combination of the carnivore diet and the weight training.
Yeah, couldn't
That
agree
is
more.
just a game changer. It's a
Couldn't
game
agree
changer.
more. One
Oh,
more told me before that the live stream was going to be on August 8th. Is it the 8th or the 18th? You just told us
the
it was the
18th.
18th. I just
Um,
want to confirm. It's the
the
18th.
18th. Yeah.
Okay,
8
August 18th.
18
Awesome. Okay,
2025.
great.
Yep.
People can find
So
it
yeah.
and jump on live. That sounds like an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, if not, you can pull it up later. I can't wait to reach out to her as well. She sounds like an amazing person and somebody
Yeah.
we should be getting on our show as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this has been a really a favorite conversation of mine. I've really enjoyed chatting with you,
Oh, thank
and
you.
hearing your story again was so super inspiring today. So, Diane, I hope our paths cross in person one of these days. I hope we can go to a meetup
Yes.
and share a steak
Oh, that would be
together.
fabulous.
It would
Yeah.
be awesome for sure.
Yeah.
But for now, thank you so very much for everything that you do, and thank you for taking time out of your day to be on our show today. We really appreciate you.
And thank you for having me, Casey.
It was such an honor, such a pleasure. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.